Episode 1. The smell of raw aggression was thick enough to choke on. Two alphas from the minor houses, Garrow and Vane, stood chest to chest in the meadow, their fangs bared and spit flying. "This creek has been our border for 3 generations," Garrow roared. His fur was already beginning to sprout along his neck. A messy, violent shift was coming. Elara stepped between them. She was small, draped in the pristine white silks of the Silvercrest diplomats, looking like a dove between 2 wolves. Deep down, she knew the truth. If she didn't fix this, her father, Alpha Fenris, would use it as an excuse to execute them both. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. No matter how hard she tried, the peace of this pack always felt like a house of cards. "Garrow, look at the silt," she said, her voice a forced anchor of calm. She reached out, her fingers grazing the rough wool of his tunic. Through the touch, her strategic empathy flared. She felt his bone-deep fear of starving in the winter. The water didn't move because of a land grab. The spring thaw diverted it. Vane isn't stealing your land. The mountain is giving you both a new path. The tension broke as the 2 men blinked, the primal red fading from their eyes. She spoke with a soft, rhythmic grace that made their hackles drop. "Shared water means shared hunts. Would you rather bleed for a muddy creek or feast together on the elk coming south?" After that, the snarls turned into grunts of reluctant agreement. Elara felt a wave of nausea. She was the pack's fixer, the one who smoothed the jagged edges of her father's cruelty. Next, she watched them shake hands, but her own hands were trembling under her sleeves. She had to be perfect. She had to be indispensable. If she wasn't useful, she was nothing. The air in the high tower was cold, colder than the mountain wind outside. Alpha Fenris sat on a throne carved from the bones of rivals, his eyes like flint. Elara stood before him, her head bowed. She had just saved 2 families from a bloodbath. She waited for the praise that never came. "Your hem is stained with mud, Elara," Fenris said, his voice a low, rumbling threat. He didn't look at her face. He looked at the dirt on her silk. A representative of the Thorne bloodline should not look like a scavenger. "I settled the border dispute, father," she whispered. Truth be told, she just wanted him to see her. She wanted him to say, "Well done." Instead, he stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed her whole. "Disputes are for the weak," he spat. "We have a larger problem. The Ironclaw pack is demanding the blood debt be paid. They want payment for the skirmish at the Western Pass." Moments later, he stepped into her personal space, the scent of cedar and old blood clinging to him. He reached out, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. His touch wasn't fatherly. It was the touch of a jeweler checking a diamond for cracks. "The Ironclaws are restless, but I have found a final solution, one you should be honored to participate in." Elara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room. He was looking at her the way he looked at a map, calculating the cost of a sacrifice. What followed was a silence so heavy it felt like it would crush her lungs. She smiled, a brittle fake thing. "Anything for the pack, father." Back in her room, the silence roared. Elara stripped off the silks, her skin crawling. Her reflection in the silver-framed mirror looked like a ghost. She was 24, and she felt like she had lived a century. Her body moved on instinct as she began to pack a small bag, then stopped. Where would she go? The pack bond was a tether. She couldn't run. She sat on the edge of her bed, her breath catching in her throat. She was the silver heir, the diplomatic face of the greatest pack in the valley. Yet she felt like a prisoner in a gilded cage. Every favor she did, every fire she put out, was just a way to buy another day of safety. But then, the door creaked open. Her younger brother, Leo, slipped inside. His eyes were wide and brimming with tears. "Elara, the guards are talking. They're saying the Ironclaws are coming tomorrow. They say there's going to be a cleansing at the ridge." "It's just talk, Leo," she lied, but her chest ached. She pulled him into a hug, her fingers digging into his shoulders. She didn't know what scared her more, the Ironclaws or the look of cold indifference in her father's eyes. "They said father is sending a tribute," Leo whimpered. "They said it's the only way to keep the peace." Still, Elara held him, her mind spinning. She had spent her life being the shield for this pack, but the shield was cracking. Not only that, she realized that the people she protected would watch her fall if it meant they stayed safe. Eventually, she sent him away, staring out the window at the dark, jagged line of Shadow Ridge. The mist at the border of Shadow Ridge didn't move like normal fog. It swirled like it was alive, a gray, hungry thing that swallowed the light. Elara stood at the very edge of the Silvercrest territory, her boots pressing into the frost-covered grass. They called this place the Dump of the Damned. It was where the rogues went to die, the monsters too feral for pack life. As fire bloomed beneath her skin, a shiver of pure terror raced down her spine. She had been raised on stories of the exiles, creatures who had lost their humanity and turned into cannibals. Even so, she found herself leaning forward, trying to peer through the gloom. "Is anyone there?" she whispered. The forest held its breath. She felt the weight of her bloodline, the silver magic that supposedly made her better than the things in the dark. It felt like a lie. Without warning, the mist parted. For the span of a breath, she saw them. Two burning gold eyes, steady and ancient. They weren't the eyes of a mindless beast. They were the eyes of a judge. The moment their eyes locked, Elara forgot how to breathe. The air thickened with a scent she couldn't name, rain on hot stone and something primal, something like freedom. But then the eyes vanished. The silence stretched, and she was alone again. Soon after, she turned and ran back toward the lights of the heights, feeling like she was being watched by the very ground itself. The arrival of the Ironclaw Alpha, Silas, was not a diplomatic visit. It was an invasion. He rode in on a massive black horse, his warriors trailing behind him like a funeral procession. Silas was a man of scars and iron, his presence a jagged contrast to the polished marble of Silvercrest. "Fenris!" Silas bellowed in the courtyard. "The sun is setting on our agreement. The debt is due." Elara stepped forward, her diplomat's mask firmly in place. "Alpha Silas, we have prepared a trade. 3 years of mineral rights and a bypass through the southern pass. It is more than enough to cover the loss of your scouts." Silas laughed, a dry, hacking sound that made the Silvercrest guards flinch. He walked toward her, his scent of wet fur and iron filling her senses. He was a predator who had found a new scent. "You offer me stones and dirt, little girl?" "I offer you prosperity without war," she countered, but her voice trembled. Silas reached out, grabbing her chin with a hand that felt like a vice. He turned her head from side to side, inspecting her like cattle. "I don't want your dirt, Fenris," Silas said, looking past her to the throne. "I want something precious, something that hurts to lose. I want the girl." As the silence roared, Elara looked at her father. She expected him to growl. She expected him to shift and tear Silas's throat out for even suggesting it. Instead, Fenris simply nodded. "The debt will be paid in full." Elara didn't go to her room. Rather, she followed the shadows of the back hallway, her heart skipping beats like a broken clock. She reached the vent behind the council chamber, her breath held tight. Inside, the elders were murmuring, their voices like dry leaves. "It is a necessary loss," one said. "She has no mate, no heirs. Her utility as a diplomat has peaked." "Silas won't keep her." Fenris's voice cut through the air, cold as a winter grave. "He will dump her in the ridge within a week. It clears the debt and removes a potential rival for the throne. She is too popular with the lower houses. She makes them think they have a voice." Truth be told, hearing the words was worse than the betrayal itself. She felt it, clear as day. The bond she had cherished her whole life was nothing but a leash. Her father didn't love her. He was afraid of her. Suddenly, a hand slammed onto her shoulder. She didn't have time to scream before she was spun around. It was the captain of the guard, his face a mask of duty. Eavesdropping on the Alpha is a crime, Elara. He's selling me, she hissed, trying to pull away. He's trading his own daughter like a goat. He is doing what is best for the pack, the captain said, his grip tightening until her chest ached. Because of that, she realized there were no allies here. The entire world she had built was a lie designed to keep her quiet until she could be sold. Moments later, he was dragging her toward the cells, and she realized the cleansing had already begun. The banquet hall was filled with the smell of roasted stag and expensive wine. It was a celebration of peace, but it felt like a wake. Elara sat at the long table, her wrists raw from the shackles they had just removed for the meal. Everyone was eating. Everyone was laughing. Across the table, her cousins avoided her eyes. They knew. Even the servants, people she had helped with their own family debts, wouldn't look at her. By the time the third course was served, the air in the room felt like poison. "To Silvercrest!" Fenris shouted, standing at the head of the table. "To a future without war, bought by the devotion of the Thorne line." He looked at Elara, raising his golden goblet. "My daughter has always been our greatest asset. Tonight, she performs her final service." No matter how hard she tried, Elara couldn't keep the tears back. She looked around the room, searching for one face, one person to stand up and say this was wrong. But the silence stretched, and the only sound was the clinking of silverware. They were all complicit. They were all eating the meat her blood had bought. Between one breath and the next, Elara realized she didn't want to save them anymore. If this was the perfect world she had worked so hard to maintain, it deserved to burn. Just like that, the love she felt for her pack turned into something hard and cold. "To the sacrifice," she whispered, her voice steady for the first time. Fenris grinned, a shark-like baring of teeth. As if fate demanded it, he raised his glass higher. "To the sacrifice that keeps us whole." The moon was a sharp silver sickle in the sky. They led Elara to the stone altar at the very edge of the ridge cliff. Silas and his iron claws were waiting, their eyes glowing in the dark. Fenris stepped forward, his alpha presence expanding, heavy and suffocating. "Elara Thorne," he boomed, "you are hereby stripped of your name, your rank, and your blood." He placed a hand on her forehead. The severing was a ritual of pure agony. It wasn't just physical. It felt like her soul was being shredded. The mental link to the pack, the hum of 1,000 voices she had heard since birth, was suddenly cut. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. She collapsed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was a blank now. She had no pack, no family, no protection. She was a ghost in her body. Without thinking, she looked up at the moon, but it felt distant and cold. "Throw her over," Silas ordered. "Let the ridge have what's left." The guards grabbed her, dragging her toward the edge. As her world tilted, she saw Leo crying in the distance, held back by a guard. She saw her father turning his back, already walking away. Before she could move, they shoved. She fell into the mist, the cold air whipping her hair, and just like that, everything changed. She didn't scream. She just watched the lights of Silvercrest disappear, her heart turning to stone as the darkness closed in. Soon after, the moon rose higher, marking the start of a war they didn't even know was coming. Elara thought the severing was the end of her life. She was wrong. As the mists of the Shadow Ridge swallow her whole, a pair of golden eyes watches from the dark, eyes that belong to a monster even the Alphas fear. But is he her executioner? Or her only hope? Click now for episode 2, The Shadow Debt, to see who is waiting in